Okay, this is a second try. I apologize. This is Dr. Wickham Simonds. I'm an obesity medicine specialist from the Triangle region of North Carolina. I've never done a Facebook Live before. I really appreciate the Adapt Live crew for inviting me as a speaker today. And I hope I can teach you something about the key concepts in the treatment of obesity. I'm not sure what all the buttons on my phone mean, so if I seem a little bit out of it, just cut me some slack. I'm not the most technologically advanced guy out there. So anyway, I want to make a couple announcements before we start talking about the subject at hand. The first is that I'm really excited about a live event which we're going to be doing in North Carolina on Saturday, September 22nd. And at that event are going to be some great speakers, and it would be terrific if you could join us. Some of those speakers, Christy Sullivan, Amy Berger, Dr. Casey Durango, Dr. Eric Westman, and myself, and we would really love to see you there if you could make it. It's going to be a fantastic event. Now, you say, well, how do I learn more about that? You can go to www.adaptyourlife.com, and if you'll subscribe to the email list there, you'll get updates about this, about the time and the date, the location, all of that stuff. And I'd really like to meet you there. I know the other speakers would like to meet you there, so please consider that. The other thing I'd say before we kind of delve into all the other stuff we're going to talk about today is please subscribe to this channel. It's fantastic. It's full of good information, and I think it's a real worthwhile thing to do, and you'll be glad you did. Now, you can see in the background here, this is kind of a different background probably than you've seen in previous videos that have appeared on on this channel, Facebook Live, and I'm at a beach house. So although I practice in the Raleigh-Durham area, if you're not familiar with North Carolina, we have the mountains and the coast, and we have a lot of coastline. So late last night, I drove down and came to a beach house, and this was the only room in the beach house where I could do this broadcast. So I wanted to explain the surfboard in the background and the kind of beachy look. And I have 4 little Yorkies that are here in the house with me. And although I've tried to seal off this room, if you hear a faint bark in the background, I wanted you to know that's what it was. I wore a little microphone that's supposed to kind of filter that out and just pick up my voice. But you know how those things work. It doesn't always work out exactly that way. So just thought I'd give you some heads up before we got going. Now, a little more about myself. I started in emergency medicine. That's where my residency training and board certification is in. And about 15 years ago, began to practice obesity medicine part-time. About 10 years ago, I completely stopped practicing emergency medicine, and now all I do is obesity medicine. So 3 offices, 15 years, and about 30,000 patients. So I've got a wealth of knowledge about the actual treatment of patients when it comes to this disease process. Now, you pair that with all the existing science and emerging science that's coming forth about this disease, and it's made for a really exciting practice. And I wanted to be able to share with you today some of those key concepts. A lot of speakers and authors will delve into one very specific area. And I'm the kind of guy who just says, hey, how do I take all the concepts and distill them down so that patients understand them? And once patients get a hold of that, my goal is that, hey, they'll go out and tell other people. Because as a society, we've got to deal with this problem. This is a serious problem, and it is a tremendous threat to civilized nations, not just the United States, but it's a worldwide epidemic now. And it is a real threat on many fronts, from a public health standpoint, from an economic standpoint. And so if I educate patients and I educate you today, and you can go out and tell other people about this, it spreads the word. So there's kind of 10 concepts that I wanted to talk about. The first is obesity is a disease, and that's important. It's a disease, and it is a permanent change in one's biology. So I think that in the past, medical professionals, and unfortunately still today, many medical professionals believe that obesity is something that's all a psychological thing and a character thing. And that is not true. Obesity really is a disease, and it is very complex, and it has a basis that is chemical and physiologic in nature, and there are a lot of things that go into it, and it's beyond the scope of a short Facebook Live video to be able to discuss all of that. But if I can distill it down, if you'll think of it as a disease process, and the point that's really important to remember is that it permanently changes your biology. So the way that I describe this to patients is that it's like going over a bridge. Once you've accumulated a certain amount of body fat, your body changes. You go over the bridge, you burn the bridge, and at that point, trouble. You can't get back to the other side, even if you lose weight. Even if you achieve a, quote, normal weight, you've had a permanent change in your biology that makes you prone to weight regain. Your body chemically is making you regain weight. It's trying its very hardest to get you to your highest weight again. So I kind of use the statement, your body protects you from starvation, but it does not protect you from obesity. And this is important because it's a lifelong problem. I'm going to say that again and again and again. You don't just lose some weight and the problem's solved. It's way more complex than that. So that's the first key concept to remember when you talk about obesity. The second concept is that obesity is a disease of excess body fat. Now, we've always thought about it in terms of a weight. This person looks too large, or this person doesn't look large enough, or whatever. No, think of the body fat as an organ. Okay, just like you would think of your heart or your liver or anything like that. Okay, any other organ like that. If your heart became diseased, you'd call it cardiomyopathy, and if your liver became diseased, you would treat it. And so the body fat is an organ in and of itself. And we used to think, okay, wait a minute, this is just insulation, this fat, it's harmless, it cushions your organs against traumatic things and keeps you warm in the wintertime and all of that sort of thing. Well, it's not that simple. It's a disease of excess body fat. And that leads me to key concept number 3, which is obesity is not always a disease of weight. Okay, it's true that when you have excess body fat, a majority of patients will be overweight. But it's also true that there are many normal weight patients who have excess body fat, and they are actually obese. Okay, they are all the things that travel in that same bus with obesity, if you will, with obesity as the driver, all the other same diseases. That person who is thinner but has excess body fat, they're at the same risk of getting those things as the person who's overweight and has excess body fat. And so thinking of it just in terms of weight is probably not a good way to think about it. Thinking about it in terms of the amount of body fat one has is a better way to think about it. Now, the fourth concept that I want to talk about is obesity, as I say, manifests with many other comorbidities. So think of a wolf pack, for example. I use the analogy of a bus with obesity as the driver. Well, maybe a wolf pack, and obesity is the leader of the pack. So these comorbidities always run with obesity. And this pack runs together. So when you have obesity, you have these other problems. Now, we tend to classify these other comorbidities into two major categories. The first we would call fat mass disease. And just as an example of that, for example, if you have sleep apnea, well, what happens there anatomically is the fat is accumulating in your upper respiratory passages, and you can't get the air in normally at night when you're sleeping, okay? So it's the result of fat accumulation there. The mass of fat is obstructing the normal flow of air. And so we call that fat mass disease. Another example of that would be, for example, if you have excess body fat, you're overweight, and it causes you to have back pain or knee pain or hip pain, joint pain of some kind. This is fat mass disease, right? So that's one aspect of obesity. In my opinion, the more dangerous aspect, though, is what we call sick fat disease. So you accumulate too much body fat, and this is all of the metabolic stuff you've heard of. So diabetes, lipid problems, hypertension, inflammatory conditions of all kinds, associated with cancers of various kinds. This is a real problem, and we're finding that these connections are a lot stronger than we thought. So the fat mass disease, the sick fat disease, they're both a manifestation of accumulating too much body fat, and if you'll think of it again, wolves running a pack. The pack leader in this case is obesity. So the fifth concept then is obesity is not a character flaw. And this has been a great disservice to the American population and the world population at large. And this is an indictment on the medical community, in my opinion, and history is going to judge us, me and my colleagues, it's going to judge us rather harshly, because the predominant view is that people are just weak, and that they could avoid this, and that they just don't do it because they're deficient in their character. And this is absolutely ridiculous, and it is unfortunate that this view persists, but it is a societal view in many cases, and certainly in the medical community we've not dealt with it. And so when you talk to doctors like Eric Westman or myself, look, we're enlightened. We see what the deal is, okay? We see what the deal is, but we unfortunately represent the minority in this case. So we take our case to patients and to the general populace and say, let's explain what's going on here so that you know, so that even if other providers don't want to buy in yet, eventually enough pressure is going to mount that they're going to have to confront the evidence and change their minds about it. Because you can't treat the character flaw. You treat the disease. And if you're going to get rid of this problem and eradicate it off the planet, you're going to have to quit looking at it as a character flaw. That's not the way to go about it. And so I think this is a big hurdle that we're going to have to cross as a nation before we begin to really treat this problem effectively. Now, that leads me to the sixth concept in the key concepts in obesity treatment, and that is you should treat the body fat itself as an organ. Okay, treat the fat, treat the excess fat. So me, the physician, I look at, hey, I need to treat that dysfunctional organ, and if I do that, then I'm going to clear up all the other problems. Okay, I'm going to fix all the other wolves in that pack if I just treat the pack leader, you see. So treat body fat as an organ, use that as your target, and you'll clear up all these other problems. And so I think a lot of physicians haven't thought about this before, and maybe patients haven't thought about it. And so when you think about your weight and, hey, I want to lose weight, well, you want to lose body fat. And I think you want to make your therapies whether they're diet or medicinal therapies or whatever they are, they should target that body fat. And you should keep that in mind with all of your decisions about this sort of thing, because that's the dysfunctional organ we're treating. And when you fix it, you fix a whole host of problems. Now, I always say, after interviewing public health experts on this matter, that if we actually did this with people and just treated the body fat, and it can be done rather cheaply, in my opinion, you would fix this problem, and we would be paying 25 cents on the dollar for health care here in the United States compared to what we're paying today. It would be 3/4 less than what we're currently spending as a nation on this stuff. Many of the diseases that we see as commonplace here would clear themselves up, and they would no longer be a problem. So that's a really important point when one is considering this disease and how to deal with it. The seventh key concept is something that I think people watching this video will know and understand. And all low-carb people and ketogenic, serious ketogenic people, they understand what I'm about to say on the seventh concept, which is insulin is the body's fat storage hormone. Case closed. It is the queen mother of all evils. And the therapy that we prescribe to people should target this, because you can't separate treating the excess body fat and insulin. You've got to deal with both of them at the same time. And this is why I carry Adapt products in my practice. Now, they're not paying me to say this. I'm not receiving any endorsement fees from them or anything. They just make really good products that are designed around this concept to keep your insulin level down. It's quality ingredients, and those products are built around this concept. If you can take the body's fat storage hormone and you can bring it back into line, you can bring it down, well then you get out of fat storage mode. Your body then is naturally a fat burner, and you can turn your body loose and it will burn fat, and you can start to fix this disease organ. But you're not going to fix it if you have this chronically high insulin level. And that's what most Americans have, because we have this food supply that's built on primarily the ingestion of carbohydrate, and in particular refined carbohydrate. And I get the fact that it feeds 320 million people a year effectively, but you know what? I believe it's also killing us. And so we've got to look at this thing different, and look at the way we consume food different, and our food supply different. And in doing that, targeting insulin is an absolute necessity. So I think there will be no argument on this front. If you're new to this sort of thing, and maybe you're watching this video and you're not sure about this low carb stuff, look, the idea of a low carb or ketogenic diet is to bring your insulin level down. This hyperinsulinemia historically was never normal in human beings, and it is associated with a host of very negative things that happen to your body over time. And so all these things that, if you grew up in the United States and you see people now, all these diseases you take for granted and say, well, people have these. Well, they have not always had these. This is historically a new thing. And insulin is at the root of this thing, and we've got to deal with it. All right, so the eighth concept is, look, because obesity is a disease, if you need medication for it, it's fine to take it. Okay, there are about 10 medications that are regularly used to treat obesity. It's not a ton. If you look at cardiovascular medications, there's probably 150 or so on the market. Well, we've got about 10 for the treatment of obesity. But look, there's older options and newer options, and I prescribe those things to people who need them. And I'm going to tell you why. This is what I'm about to say. I really want this to sink in. It's really important. The food that we eat, it's becoming apparent that the food that we eat directly injures anatomic sites in your body. And this should not be a surprise. It really shouldn't when you think about it. Most of you go to the dentist, right? And when you go to the dentist, what do they say about sugar? It rots your what? Your teeth, right? So they're not in favor of you eating a lot of sugar because it rots your teeth. Well, I have news for you. The evidence is mounting. It rots every cell in your body. It's not just your teeth. It's not like when you swallow it, the problem ends. No, the destruction it does to your teeth, it's doing to all the other organs in your body. So when you look at mice model, rodent models, for example, and you feed them a diet that's high in sugar and high in polyunsaturated hydrogenated oils, for example, what'll happen with that is that when they die and you section their brains, you'll see that the weight regulation center in their brain there is massive destruction there. Many of the neurons are completely destroyed, and the remaining ones have a remarkable amount of inflammation or are partially destroyed. And you say, well, Wickham, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that the body, through your body fat stores, through your digestive tract, and through other sites in your brain, is sending chemical signals to this weight regulation center. And those signals are designed to signal your appetite center, hey, you're full, you're satisfied, stop eating. To signal, hey, there's enough pleasure there, it's time to stop. Well, if this area has been destroyed or partially destroyed, then you can't perceive these signals. And this is a problem. So people don't, it's like they can't, you can't just say eat less and exercise more. The part of their brain that perceives the eat less part is actually directly injured and inflamed, and they can't perceive what that means. And because of the excess body fat, a lot of the other chemical signals and mediation are out of whack. And so they've got this whole thing. It's like a symphony where the body fat is the conductor, and the conductor is telling the violas to do one thing, the violins, the cellos, and the bass to do, and they're all out of whack. And so you can't, the person can't, it's very hard for them when you say don't eat this or don't eat that and don't eat too much of this, that, or the other. Their body's going along biologically in a very different manner. And so these people may need medication to help them, because what it does is it restores some of that balance and allows them to sense, hey, what is correct fullness? What is a correct sense of a pleasure? And then, hey, I want to stop, right? So I often explain it to patients is that, hey, look, most of you have a dog, right? If you have a male dog and a female dog that is in heat comes by, your male dog is going to act in a certain way. And most of us kind of get this concept. Well, that's biology at work. It's a very powerful biology, and it's driving the behavior of your male dog, right? In a lot of ways, you can think of obesity like this. It's a biology, and it's a very powerful biology. And so, given what I just told you about these anatomic structures and so forth, you may be a person that says, look, I understand everything you're saying about insulin and all that stuff and the diet you're prescribing to me, but I still eat way too much. I don't know when to stop and stuff like that. It's okay to ask for help. I mean, it's okay to ask for help. And I prescribe medication to those people. I'm generally a guy who really doesn't like medication. I myself, I don't take a bunch of medication. I don't really want to take a bunch of medication. But if I need something like this to bring my diet under control, to treat that body fat, then that's what I'll do. And it's fairly inexpensive, and the side effect profile is not nasty. So that was point number 8. Now point number 9 is about relapse. Point 9 and 10 are both going to be about relapse and a different aspect of relapse. And I've kind of pointed this out already, but our food supply really makes patients prone to relapse. Patients who've lost weight prone to relapse. We have a toxic, addictive, genocidal food supply in the United States. Those are strong words. That's harsh. But I'm going to tell you something. It's absolutely true. And unfortunately, Don't make any mistakes here. I am a free markets kind of guy. I love this country. I served this country in the military with 3 tours in combat. I love this country. I don't want to live anywhere else, okay? I like what we're built on. But this is a hazard of the way we this is a hazard of capitalism without people and the populace having correct knowledge of what they're eating in this case. So our businesses sell food to people, and I don't believe in regulating the stuff and saying, no, you can't sell this and all that. I believe in the people actually understanding what the food can do to them. So it's kind of like alcohol, right? You can go to the liquor store. I don't believe in outlawing liquor. Go to the liquor store and buy the liquor if you want. But you need to understand what it can do to you, right? You do not want to drink that and get behind the wheel of a car. You don't want to drink a fifth of liquor every day because it's going to kill you, right? So it's kind of like that concept, right? So the food supply is bad. And I believe that this really makes relapse a problem. 90% of people who lose weight by non-surgical methods in this country gain it back. And those are the sad figures. Now, it is true that the people who lose weight and then keep it off, they actually lose and gain weight multiple times before they lose it and they keep it off. So I think part of that is that people have to learn to deal with the food supply and just settle in their minds over a period of time after making mistakes on it and so on and so forth, that, hey, I got to stick to this ketogenic lifestyle. There's not any going back. This food supply is bad, and all of the advertisement I'm getting that's constantly, whether it's over the internet, on social media, whether it's on television or radio or on billboards, it is bombarding you all the time. And unfortunately, in many cases, the food is addictive. And like I said, it's toxic. It actually hurts your body. So that's something you have to think about. Hey, once I've lost weight, the problem's not over. This is a lifelong thing. The finish line's the grave, and you've got to continue to manage it. And so I don't think that, but a lot of my patients, when they first approach me, think, well, this ketogenic thing, yeah, it's good for weight loss, but then I'm going to go back. There's an implication they're going to go back to eating, this other sort of thing. And I always say, look, get in it to win it. Forget that. There's not any going back, right? Okay, this is the way to go for the long term, because going back to that toxic food supply it's a no-go. It's the path to disease and regain. So relapse is a real problem, and let's just face it, the food supply doesn't help you there, and you got to go into obesity treatment knowing that right up front. And when you choose a ketogenic lifestyle, wrap your arms around it and settle it for the long term. It's not like you lose an excess body fat and then all of a sudden magically you're fixed again. No, you got to stick with it. And it's a long-term proposition. And that leads me to the 10th point. It's still about relapse. I've already said it. I want to emphasize it again. The biological changes of this disease make it so that your body is always trying to gain this weight back. It is a chemical and physiologic thing that defies explanation. And the body just behaves in a manner that's very different than people who've never accumulated this excess body fat. There's all sorts of changes that take place, and you can summarize them by saying your body is trying to make you go back to the highest weight that you've ever been. It is protecting you from starvation. It is not protecting you from obesity. It is aggressively working against you. And so when you treat obesity, I want you to think about it as a chronic, relapsing disease that is there for a lifetime, even if you reachieve a normal weight. And you have to be aggressive on a day-to-day basis about dealing with that. There's no turning your back on it. It's got to be like your checkbook balance. You got to pay attention to what's in there if you're going to go out and spend money, because then you don't want to start bouncing checks, right? So it's that sort of mentality that I like patients to have. And so I think for those of you who may not have decided on a ketogenic lifestyle, I would say this is a real reason to do it because it simplifies the process for you. It is a lifestyle where you choose a therapy, in this case, a diet therapy. It's very powerful that allows you to treat the diseased organ, in this case, body fat. And it's going to make you a lot healthier for the long term. It's going to take all those bad wolves out of the pack I talked about. And it is your best chance, in my opinion, in the long term of not only losing that body fat, but then keeping it off and staying healthy for the long term. And that's why I really steer patients in this direction, because this disease is not a joke. And it is an absolute epidemic which is ravaging the United States at this point and many other countries as well. It's a worldwide problem. So to the extent that I could have changed your mind about these things, I hope that I have. I hope you'll consider it. I hope that if you have not tried these ADAPT products that you will. They're absolutely fantastic. I use them in my patients and they really are very good, and they are consistent with everything that I've said. So I hope this talk has helped you, and I want to just make a couple points again in closing, that we are going to be having a live event in North Carolina on September 22nd, and I would love to see you there. There's going to be some fantastic speakers. Christy Sullivan, Amy Berger, Dr. Casey Durango, Dr. Eric Westman, myself, and we like meeting and interacting with all of you. So we hope you can make it, and if you don't know, hey, what's all the details and all that, well, go to adaptyourlife.com and subscribe to the email list, and you'll get all the details. And I personally look forward to meeting you there. I would also say, just once again, subscribe to this channel. There's great information coming off of here, and it's very useful. It's very useful to you. I watch it, and it's fantastic. So I'm happy to have addressed you all. I hope what I've said has helped you. I hope every one of you who's in the United States will enjoy your holiday week coming up and your weekend. And then for those of you tuning in from other parts of the world, well, I hope you, even though it's not your maybe an Independence Day celebration where you live, I hope that you'll take a little holiday too. That the rest and relaxation always helps. So God bless you all, and take care.